Hello to everyone in our audience, and welcome to DocEdge 2022. My name is Duncan Dykes, and with us today we have Dunstan Bruce, the co-director and star of I Get Knocked Down. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
For those of you who don't know, Dunstan is actually a DocEdge alumni as well, because his film "This Band Is So Gorgeous" played at DocEdge in 2013. So it's great to have you back.
That was quite an experience, actually, making that film. That was the first documentary I ever made.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It was amazing going to China with Sham 69, an old punk band. Yeah, that was my first attempt. Actually, my second attempt at trying to make a music documentary. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we've been able to be part of your progressing history as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I'm waiting to make a film where you invite me there. That's what I want.
Well, we'll have to aim for that with the next one. So just to lay out how this is going to work, I'll ask a couple of questions, and then at a certain point, we'll go to questions from the audience. So if you are in our audience, feel totally free to put in a question, and we'll be able to bring that up later. So Dunstan, my first question is quite simply, where did this film begin? Was it you or Sophie that kind of first had the idea?
It was me. It was about 6 or 7 years ago. I decided that I wanted to make a documentary about Chumbawamba because there was a couple of things I was concerned about. Was that the story of Chumbawamba could disappear in the annals of history and we'd just be remembered as a one-hit wonder. And also, I wanted to make a film about what you can do as a political band when you enter the mainstream. That was something that I was fascinated about how you can you actually get your voice heard? Can you make a difference? And so I had started work on the film, but wasn't really getting anywhere, and I needed some money to get the film off the ground. I met up with Sophie Robinson, who's the co-director, because she was making a film called My Beautiful Broken Brain with an editor friend of mine, Jim Scott. And Jim said that she'd done a really successful Kickstarter campaign to get the money to get him to edit the film. And so I met up with Sophie and we talked about the film. And I was saying, oh, will you help me do this Kickstarter? And she said, look, I'll help you do the Kickstarter, but I'm really fascinated by the story of the band. So I want to make the film as well. So I was like, okay, then, because what was interesting was that all she knew was the song. She didn't know the band or anything. So her history was completely different to mine. And I think that's what helped massively in the making of the film, was that we had these two completely different viewpoints on what we wanted to say. And so she was brilliant at saying stuff like, I'd say, oh, we've got to have this bit in, it's really funny. And she would say, look, there's only 8 people who will find that funny, and that's the 8 people in the band. It won't mean anything to anybody else. And so what she was brilliant at was making the film have a universal aspect to it, so that it was, so we talked about things that everybody could relate to, and it wasn't just like a real sort of navel gazing exercise.
You talk about the strength that she was able to bring on board as someone with kind of an outside perspective. I'm curious, what was it like having so much of an inside perspective? I mean, making a film where you're the star, a film that's partly about you. That's kind of a pretty unique experience, I think.
It was. I mean, some people would say that I just, everything I ever do is just about myself, which I mean, there's a grain of truth in that, I suppose. I think what's one of the things that saves the film, I think, is that obviously I have the capability to laugh at myself and not take myself too seriously at times. And also, I think what Sophie was really good at was making sure that I never ever got ideas above my station. And she was very good at puncturing any egotistical bubbles that I might ever have blown. So it was. I really enjoyed the process of perform, because a lot of the film is quite performative. You know, it's like it crosses a lot of different documentary genres, and so I really liked the process of Sophie directing me in the film, rather than me trying to do it by myself. Because when she first came on board, she came on board as a producer, and then over a period of time, it just became apparent that she was a co-director on it, and so she enabled me to have the freedom to think about. I come up with these ridiculous ideas, and then she had to work out how we would do it. Like, I'm thinking about the stuff like the scene where there's 4 of me in conversation with myself. So that was just like, I'd just seen this clip of somebody else doing that, and I was like, Sophie, you've got to see this. It's amazing. We've got to do it. We could do it with me talking about when we signed to EMI or something. And she was like, yeah, I really love it. It's great. But then she had to work out all the logistics of it. And she basically had to direct. I wrote it and she had to direct it, sort of thing. So it was like, I think one of the things that we found in the film is that we had a lot of fun making the film. It was really good fun because we would just like it felt like in fact Sophie used to say this thing that was really good, I thought, where she used to say it's like Chumbawamba's back catalogue is that we never made the same album twice. We always wanted to do something different with the next record that we did, and I think we tried to take that philosophy and use it in the film, where we were like, oh, we can't do that again. We've done that once in the film, and a lot of the interview, I think, so we always tried to do the interviews, in a different way every time with different people. So, because we were determined not to make a talking heads and archive film. We wanted it to be something a lot more. We wanted to take risks and have fun with it. And I think that's what Chumbawamba had always tried to do as well. So I quite like that there was this sort of continuity of ideas that we employed, and I thought it was brilliant that she latched onto that in the way that she did, having not known anything about Chumbawamba at all. She completely embraced that idea and positively encouraged it, and I thought so that made for a brilliant relationship between us and how we made the film.
And you're talking about the different ways you would tackle those interview scenes. I'm curious, how was the band's response to being asked to be involved in the movie? Were they receptive to you taking the step to make a movie about their lives as well?
Well, I think there was a certain level of trepidation at first from members of the band because I think initially. There was sort of concern about that. I trying to tell everybody's story, and I wasn't, and I never wanted to do that. And I think it slightly disturbed them right at the beginning that we used a tagline of the untold story of Chumbawamba. So I think they were a little bit worried that it was going to be a film that just like dug up loads of dirt about us all. But that was never ever the intention. And so we did a screening with it was during lockdown, so we did an online screening with the band, with everybody in the band, where we all watched it together. And I think it was that there was more a sense of relief from people in the band that the film was my story, that it was very much from my perspective, and I wasn't trying to speak for any of them. And that I think you got a sense of that we weren't one of those bands who all fell out with each other, and it was there was a lot of tension between us, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the scene where we're all together and we were talking about the what happened at the Brits. I think that scene's, I love that. That's one of my favorite scenes, I think, because I think you get a real sense of us enjoying each other's company still. And there is a thing about, when people say, what do you think the real success of the band is? And it's quite lovely to be able to say, well, with the fact that we're still friends, you know, and we still get on, and you know, we still collaborate on various things, and we still, you know, and everybody is still out there doing stuff that's really interesting, and you know, still trying to do something that makes a difference. And so I really like that about where we've all ended up, in a way that that we still have maintained a relationship through it all for about 40 years now, I suppose it is. So so to actually answer your question, yeah, they were all sort of willing, they were all sort of willing participants, but they did wonder, you know, what it was going to be, because when I was making it, I didn't know what it was going to be. You know, we didn't. I mean, in a lot of ways, you don't know what it is until you get into the edit, and then you start thinking about, all right, how are we going to put this together? And because we had so many starts and stops with the film, you know, with editing and what the film was what it was, you know, it changed massively over the years from you know, from when we first did. Because some of that filming's, you know, from like 5 or 6 years ago, I suppose. I mean, luckily, in what people say in their interviews, it's like pretty timeless. So we could still use the footage. But yeah, it was such a long journey. I think people were like, what on earth is going on? Why is it taking so long? A lot of that was financial. You know, a lot of it was just that we didn't have the money to, you know, pay an editor and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so there's a sense that now there's a sense of relief, and you know, like people in the band are aware that I'm representing them, you know, in a loving way, which I think is important.
Well, thank you. I'm wanting to bring back a little bit to, you were talking about the different techniques that you guys use, the different kind of crazy ideas you came up with while you were making this. I'm curious at what point Babyhead got involved, the kind of running thing throughout the movie where Babyhead is there as your sort of, you know, the devil on your shoulder in a way, telling you that what you do doesn't matter.
I think we were always wondering about how we were going to tell the story. And so we talked about, will I just do the voiceover? You know, will I just do some sort of voiceover so we can link, you know, we can link all the scenes? And that just seemed really, well, boring in a way. It just didn't seem very inspiring. And then because we'd done this thing where we'd done like a Kickstarter campaign, and so I'd been digging out loads of old Chumbawamba stuff to have as rewards for it. And I'd found that head. That head was made by EMI Japan. They made us all one each. So all 8 of us had a baby head. And I was like, and so we were wondering what to do. I think we were like wondering what to do. And I was like, I brought it into the office one day and goes, look, Sophie, have I ever showed you this head? You know, and I put it on and all that sort of stuff. And we thought it was really funny. And then we were like, maybe Babyhead could be a character, you know, maybe Babyhead could be part of the film. Maybe you should be in the film wearing that or something. And I was like, do you think so? Really? And then she was like, yeah, let's use it somehow. And so we then developed this idea that it was like, he was the antagonist. He would become the antagonist. And I suppose it becomes apparent that he's kind of like the 20-year-old version of me. And is wondering what have I done with my life and where have I got to? And, you know, like, why aren't I that 20-year-old anymore and stuff like that? And so we just started having a lot of fun with it and doing all those locked off shots. So it's me, you know, so it's me in the head, you know. So we did all these locked off shots where we'd film 2 separate, you know, things. And, you know, if you watch it really, really, really carefully, you can see, you know, there's bits where you can see that, like the beach scene. There's a beach scene with Babyhead. And obviously there's whole issues about where the tide is. And you can tell that, you know, like if you look really closely, you can tell. But yeah, so we just sort of like thought that he was a brilliant vehicle to link everything together and be always there as my voice of doubt. Because what was brilliant about that was like everybody, all of us have that doubting voice that's telling us, like we're worthless, or we're not, what we're doing has no value, or like that sort of self-criticism that we all do. And like all that thing, like where you wake up in the middle of the night and you just think, what the fuck am I doing with my life and stuff like that. That's a universal thing. That's a universal experience. And so that was a really useful tool to sort of widen out the whole story, whilst having whilst maintaining a Chumbawamba connection. And so so it was a lot of fun doing all that sort of stuff. And of course, he's really horrible to me, and it's really funny because it's it's just me being horrible to myself. But when we were editing it, right at the end, Jim Scott came on board at the end, and Jim's a really good friend, but he was he was really stressed out at this point in time, and so we were still thinking of things that Babyhead could say to me in some of the scenes, and Jim was coming up with ideas that were so brutal because he was so frustrated with the whole process that he was like, I was like, Jim, this is getting a little bit personal. What really do you think? I think that's a little bit strong. And he was going, oh, whatever, Bruce. Well, you tone that down a bit then, and maybe you could say something along them lines. And then I'd be like going to Sophie, Jim thinks he should say this. And she was like, I think that's a little bit much. Anyway, so it was, so he just, I mean, the fact of the matter is he just plays, he plays the part of, that we all have this voice in our head. Or as like you say, somebody who's on your shoulder, just like telling you that you're not worth anything. But and so that's why it's important that that at the end, like I free myself of him.
It lends such a nice kind of arc to the whole thing.
Yeah, that was I like the fact that that's the story in itself, I suppose, that runs through the film. Like it just makes it, I mean, to me, obviously I've watched loads and loads of music documentaries over the years, and the ones I find the most fascinating are the ones that do stuff like that don't follow the the usual path, because obviously there's thousands of music documentaries out there, and a lot of them are just talking heads and archive, which is fine, which is all right, but I think we were determined to do something that was a bit different to that. And so, in doing that, I mean, we have realised that we've made something that's really niche in a way. That's hard to. It's meant that it's been hard to sell the film, because it's not like a traditional doc in any way whatsoever. And a lot of people, so a lot of response we do get is that people love the film, but they can't find a slot for it anywhere because it's a bit too weird. But that is obviously, I think that's what makes it special. That it's not like any other music doc.
Thank you for that. Now, I think we have time for one more question from me before we go to our audience. So if there's one impact that you would most like an audience to take away from this film, one emotion or idea you want them to leave with, what do you think that would be?
I think it would, just going back to that idea of what Babyhead's purpose is, I think it would just be that it would just be ideas about, don't give up. It would just be that simple ideas that, that it sounds really cliched, but it is. But I mean, the film follows a path of a narrative of like me getting knocked down and I get back up again, and it sounds really, really cheesy. And I think that's something that we're all, that I hope like everybody is capable of realizing their own potential, and that we're all worth it. I do this one-man show thing that came off the back of the film. And a lot of the message of that is, it's very similar to the film. It has a big overlap with the film. A lot of the message of that is to do with, like we've got to step out of our comfort zones, and maybe do the thing, maybe do the thing that we're most afraid of, or do like getting like don't give up. It's just ideas about not giving up, and valuing our worth in the world, and that like sometimes you don't realize that you're making a difference, but you are. so it's that we used to have this idea that we wanted people to come out of the cinema like, yes, I'm gonna get involved in something, or I'm gonna do something, or and that can be on any sort of level. We just wanted it to be inspiring in a way to people. And also, what I really like is that idea that we are all part of a community. And we always wanted the film to express that idea that, you're not alone, basically. I think that's a really important message, because a lot of the time you just feel as though you're struggling, with the world and with what's going on in the world. And it feels as though you're just by yourself, battling against all these forces. I think what I really enjoyed about stuff like being in a band and also screening the film and doing the one-man show is, it's, even though the performance of all those things is really important and really enjoyable, I think what's also really lovely is that you create an environment where you bring people together, and you realize that you're not, it's not just you, and there's a lot of people that feel the same as you. And I think that's a really powerful thing when you realize you're part of a community of like-minded people. And I really like that about performance, is that's to me is as important as the actual performance for me.
Thank you for that. And I think the film does strike a very hopeful tone that I think is part of what makes it so effective. Like, I quite like the way the film sort of addresses this cynicism you might have if your younger self is looking at where you've ended up, and all the visits back to the other members of the band. I like the way that it kind of shows all of them have just found new things to do. They're all just still doing what they're wanting to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really. I really like the film, but I really like this. I really like that scene early on with Harry, where he's basically performing in a Christmas panto, and I like that scene because obviously the idea is that you start off being really cynical about like what he's doing, and it seems like pretty funny that he's now in a panto, a Christmas show or whatever it was. But I think that scene turns it around where it ends up going, actually Harry's really sorted, and he knows what he thinks, and he knows what he's doing, and it's you, and it's me that was the problem. It was me who had the problem with thinking that what he was doing had no value, when it massively did. And I sort of like that. I like that thing about, and that's part, that was obviously part of the whole thing about being self-critical and stuff like that, and finding your way through all that sort of stuff.
Well, thank you. That's great. We're going to go to some questions from our audience now. So the first question we've got is from KC. We've got quite a broad question. How did you go from working in music to working in a film way back when you made your first documentary?
Okay, that's what happened was in 1999 or 2000, I sort of made a film with a friend director called Ben Unwin, which was a film called Well Done Now Sod Off, which is a potted history of Chumbawamba. Now that film never got released because we never got any of the footage cleared in it or anything. It would have cost us hundreds of thousands of pounds. But having experienced that, we were Chumbawamba. Those after Tub Thumping, we sort of wanted to let people know that we weren't just this one-hit wonder. It was always quite a big thing that we'd existed for 15 years before that song happened. So I made that documentary with Ben, and nothing much came of it because we didn't follow through on turning it into a proper film. But then about 9 years later, then I had that opportunity to go to China with Sham 69, and that just happened because at the time my partner at the time was a documentary maker, and we set up our own production company. And I was initially helping her make documentaries. I was producing them, but I realized really quickly that I have no penchant for doing anything administrative or having a role like that. And all I wanted to do was make documentaries. And so when this opportunity came along to go to China, it was actually her. It was actually Daisy who got that offer to go to China, and she was like, "Look, I don't want to go to China with a punk band." And she was like, "Why don't you go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to go. It'd be brilliant." So I just went with a friend who was a cameraman, and we both just had like a little camera each, and we went on tour with Sham 69 around China. So it was just a series of like opportunities that it was like it was just being in the right place at the right time that meant that we went to make this film. I just thought, brilliant, I'm going to do this now. So I mean, it was something that I was always interested. I was always interested. I'm obviously, a cinema is a massive thing, for Chumbawamba, and I was always interested in music docs. So it was quite and also it wasn't stepping too far out of my own comfort zone, because obviously music is a world that I understand. So making a music doc was something that I just thought, actually, that's quite a little step to make to like to cut my teeth on making a film like that. And then I made another one. Another music doc about a Brighton band called the Levellers, who they're big over here, and then that led to me then wanting to do the Chumbawamba one.
And did you find much transferable skill? Like, you talk about how having that music base is great for making music documentaries, but even just for transferring kind of creative skills, did you find it helped with editing or?
It helped massively, having that understanding of music. I think, but I think the thing that it helped with most was understanding, musicians and performers, really. So like when you're there when you're there filming somebody in a band, like I had that understanding of when to talk to them and when not to talk to them. And when they might want to be by themselves, or when it might be opportune to sort of try and push something, like a conversation or a difficult conversation, or to talk about relationships within the band and stuff like that. I think those sort of things, I had that understanding of what it's like to be a performer and how that feels as well. So I think that sort of helped in a way. I mean, sometimes there is obviously a type of documentary where the charm is in the person who's making the documentary not knowing anything at all about the subject matter, or going into it, blind, with really sort of what's the word? Is it naff or naif or something like that? Where you just sort of like you play the role of somebody who's like just ignorant, and so you ask questions that are sort of it looks like you're being disarming, but really you're being really brutally honest with them. And I sort of like, I think because that was my world, it was really easy to understand the psychology of being in a band as well. And so you're aware of tensions within the band, with any band that you were working with, and also really understood that sort of idea that there's, you're in a band with a group of people, and it is like a family. It becomes a family. It becomes a family. So you can be completely and utterly irritated with somebody else in the band, but you also love them. You absolutely love them because you've been in a band with them for years. But at the same time, they can drive you absolutely mad. And we all know what that's like. Being in whether it's being in a relationship or being in or being with your family, sort of thing. And that's what being in a band was like. And so I understood all that sort of the dynamics of all that as well.
And I'm curious as well. So you've made this documentary. You made This Band Is So Gorgeous. I'm curious. Do you have plans, or have you had any experience in making documentaries that aren't about music at all?
No.
Is that something you're interested in?
I've thought about that, about what a challenge it would be for me to do something completely different. I had this conversation with Sophie when we finished the film, when we finished editing the film, because Sophie makes completely different documentaries about a whole range of subjects and topics. She's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant. I think she's an amazing filmmaker. And so I said to her, "So, do you think we'll make another film together?" Because I just thought, this has worked really well. And she just went, nah. I was like, what? Why not? Why won't we make one together? And she was like, well, she was like, I just think you should be performing. You should be on stage, or you should be in front of the camera. I think that's what you're best what you're best at, basically, is performing. And that's how the one man show happened, really. It was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this one man show then. And she was like, okay, well, I'll direct it, because she started off in theatre and got into film. So that has never become an issue for me about whether I wanted to make something that was outside of this. Really, I should go and make something that's completely different. That's a real challenge to me. But I've now made a few documentaries where they haven't been funded, and it's really hard work. It's like it takes a long time, and I suppose at this point in time, that's the problem, is that I would have to be something that I found. Nobody's offering me, saying, "Oh, Dunst, do you want to make this film?" And that does happen to Sophie. Sophie has people coming up to her all the time going, "Oh, will you make this film? Like, we've got this idea. Will you do it?" And so she's always making different things, but that doesn't happen to me. So I would have to have the idea myself, and then go and start like self-funding it again. And at this point in time, I'm just really enjoying doing the one-man show. And so I'm just concentrating on that at the moment.
And you've talked a couple of times about the way that funding worked for this movie. You started off with a Kickstarter for this. Can you talk a little bit more about what that process was like, especially as someone who's quite new to using Kickstarter, I imagine?
Yeah, well, that's how I met Sophie, was because she'd done a really successful Kickstarter campaign for a previous film that she'd made. And so I think we just thought that it was a really good idea, like, because the band had a huge fan base, we thought we could tap into that and find people who were interested in seeing a Chumbawamba documentary. So it's not something that I would advise everybody to do, in a way, because it's really hard. It's really hard work, and obviously because it was Chumbawamba, I had loads of stuff I could offer as rewards. That wasn't the difficult part of the whole thing. I think the difficult part of the whole thing was keeping all the Kickstarter contributors happy. Because obviously, like, they're like, sort of, a lot of them are really hardcore Chumbawamba fans, and they're quite sort of certain about what they want the film to be. And so we had to make the film that we wanted to make, and not just make a film that we thought would satisfy the hardcore Chumbawamba fans. So that process is quite taxing, in a way, because you are aware of the fact that there's people who have contributed to the film, and so they have a sort of vested interest in what the final thing is. And obviously, when making a documentary obviously takes years when you're self-funding. I mean, it took us 5 or 6 years. Obviously, if you're in the documentary world, that's how long it takes to make a documentary. That's no big thing. It takes a lot of people a lot of time. But if you have no knowledge of that world, you obviously just think, well, obviously you just go away and film for a few weeks, and then you spend a couple of months editing, and then you've got a film, and then you put it out. And so people don't understand the whole process. And so you have to be really, really patient with people and try and explain, look, we're trying really hard to get this film made. We want to make this film as much as you want to see it. It's just, like, there's so many financial restraints. And because of the subject matter, it was hard to get fun. It was, the Kickstarter campaign worked really well, and that helped us film, do all the filming. But then we were never able to find funding from anywhere else to pay for the editor, to pay for editors to put it together. So that process just took a really, really long time. And we thought about going back to like, do another crowdfunder, but then we just thought it was we just didn't feel as though it was fair on people to then go back and try and raise more money. And so we just took a very long time. The thing about it taking a very long time, though, does mean that we had a lot of time to think about what the film was and the structure of the film. And so it wouldn't have been the film, if we'd got the money straight away, the film would have been completely different. And it, to our minds, wouldn't have been as interesting or as fascinating as what the film ended up being.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I think we have time maybe for one more question. We have from Ronnie. The end credits with sort of montage of everyone singing Tub Thumping. How did that idea come about? At what point in the process did you think
well,
that's the way to...
that's sort of because what happens is like you know, I still get messages off people, off friends, which I love, that say, I've just heard your song on, you know, this program or that program. You know, and oh, I've just seen it on so. So that's always really, I really enjoy that. It's really, I just really like that people enjoy it and our friends enjoy it. So by the same token, people would find, you know, versions of the song and say, have you seen this? Have you seen this one? You know, like someone's done Tub Thumping a cappella. Have you seen this? But I think the thing that started it is, there's a whole village in Spain that are in that compilation that did a version of the song, and it's one shot where they go through, where they do the whole song, and the whole village take part in the song. And originally we were gonna go to the village and film, you know, there and do something there. But then we didn't have the money. We ended up not having the money to do that, and so we thought, maybe we could do something with all these different versions. And I think what we wanted that whole sequence to say was, look, it's 25 years later and this song is still resonating with people, and people are still finding something in the song that means that they want to perform it, or, you know, they want to express, you know, that really universal idea of, you know, of getting back up again. Which we thought was just, we just thought it was a really lovely way to bring the whole thing back together. That at the end of the day, it's this idea that, you know, the song is living on with all these different people, and it still means something to people and still has some sort of resonance. And is because what we really loved about the song is that we would get messages from people all the time, and still do, about how the song has impacted on them in their life, or how the song was the song they used to you know, get them through a difficult time or an illness, or, you know, or got played at someone's funeral and stuff like that, or, you know, was the wedding song and stuff like that. And I think what's interesting about that song, as a member of Chumbawamba, who were like, you know, like fiercely political band, was that is not the most political song we ever wrote, and yet that's the song that's resonated so much with people. And I think it was because the message can be applied to so many different situations, and sometimes that would trip us up, because we would get right-wing politicians wanting to use the song as their campaign song. That happened with a politician in the UK. It happened with some American right wingers, and it happened with some Australian right winger. And you know, so we had to send out. You send out this thing called a cease and desist letter, where you basically say, you know, we're not happy with you using this song. We don't want you to use it, and if you carry on using it, we'll get lawyers involved and stuff like that. It's like a standard procedure where you just say stop using the song, which is what happened to, I suppose that happened to Donald Trump quite a lot, with different bands who had to get in touch with them and said, don't you dare use my song. And so it's weird that the song was being used by people on the right, which we completely disagreed with and were unhappy about. But so that whole end thing is, after all the torture and pain that I've been through during the film, that's meant to be, you know, like, that's a big celebration basically at the end. And it does leave you, you know, I think it does leave you like thinking, oh wow, that's, you know, it leaves you with a lovely feeling, I think, of, you know, of communality, and, you know, and the fact that the song crossed over all these different international barriers and all these different people doing versions of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a really warm way to end the film, and it is a bit of vindication, like you say, for all the kind of the doubt that's being thrown at you all the way through the film, to see the effect it has on people.
Yeah, yeah, because so like I mean, a lot of the a lot of the film is about is talking about serious issues, and it's like being quite earnest about what did Chumbawamba achieve, and at the end, and so it's like at the end of the day, it was a song, and this was it, and this is how people respond to it, and that in itself is a really gorgeous thing, that people just actually get something out of the song, and that it's the power of music, I suppose, is such a wonderful thing.
Well, I think that's all the time that we have today. For those of you watching our audience, if you haven't seen the film yet, I really recommend it. It is available to watch on our website for another week. The festival is being extended online until the 17th. So I really, really recommend checking it out. And Dunstan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for coming along to see the film as well. I really appreciate it. We just want as many people as possible to see it, so it's lovely that you were there. Thank you.
And hopefully next time we can actually bring you out to New Zealand for this.
Now you've established I'm not going to make another documentary.
You could take the one-man show out here.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and
thanks a lot.
See you next time.
Okay, cheers.